next week for an ordination and to Crookstone on the 30th for a wedding. She will be giving us a 5 to 7 minute speech titled Vincent. Please help me welcome Mara.
The only rule American poet Edna St. Vincent Millay enforced at her swimming pool in upstate New York in the 20s and 30s was this: no swimsuits were allowed. This rule encapsulates Edna's bohemian lifestyle in upstate New York with her husband, Eugen, at that time. I learned this fact when I visited her house, Steepletop, in May with my friend Kate. We'd both fallen in love with Millay's poetry in college, and we'd been plotting this trip for over a year. If you, like me prior to my introduction, are unfamiliar with Millay's life, I'd like to share a little bit about her with you. Millay was born in 1892 in Rockland, Maine, the eldest of 3 sisters of a working-class family. Her mother was a visiting nurse who was frequently away from home, staying with patients to take care of them, and Millay helped raise her 2 younger sisters after her parents separated in 1900 when she was 8. Millay, who went by the name Vincent throughout her life to close friends, wrote poetry throughout her youth, winning several prizes, and at the age of 19, her first major work as an adult, Renaissance, placed 4th in a nationwide contest. That 4th place finish became a bit of a scandal among various literary luminaries of the time, including the 1st place winner of the contest, Oric Johns, who felt that Millay's poem was deserving of 1st place and should have been in 1st place. Eventually, a wealthy woman who was a patron of the arts connected with Millay and offered to send her to college, something that Millay had previously been unable to afford. So at 21, excuse me, she began her undergraduate career at Vassar in New York. Now, as you might have guessed from the fact that she didn't allow swimsuits in her pool, Millay was a little bit of a free spirit. She didn't like rules, and she chafed in undergraduate dorm life and the restrictions that were placed on it. She did, however, scrape through high marks in English and languages, poor marks in math and science, and graduated in 1917 at the age of 23. She fled to New York City's blooming bohemian scene, centered in Greenwich Village, where she became a leading figure among other literary people. She also traveled to Europe during this time, in the late teens and early 20s, writing travelogues under the pen name Nancy Boyd. She wanted to keep her poetry writing completely separate from her more serious nonfiction. She published several volumes of poetry over the next few years, culminating in 1923 with The Ballad of the Harp Weaver, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry that year, making her the first woman to do so. Also in 1923, she met and married her husband, Eugen Wasseveen, who was the heir of a Dutch-descended shipping family. They were quite wealthy. They used this combined wealth, Millay's from her best-selling poetry volumes, Eugen's from his family, to buy a farm in upstate New York, a working blueberry farm, in fact. They christened it Steepletop after the wildflowers that grew on the property, called Steeplebush, and set about renovating the house that was currently there, because Millay didn't like it. It didn't help her write her poetry. So they tore down a Victorian farmhouse and built up a New England house in style that Millay was used to growing up. They, besides installing that swimming pool, which Millay did eventually surround with a hedge to protect her guests from passing gawkers. They put in a tennis court, a vegetable garden. They bought cows and other farm animals and continued to operate the farm while they lived there in the 20s and 30s. Millay built a little cabin a stone's throw away from the house that she used to write in to get away from the distractions of the household. When she was in the throes of the creative process, If she needed anything, she would hang a handkerchief from the window of the cabin that was visible from the house, and Eugen, her husband, would take care of whatever need she had so she wouldn't be interrupted. She filled a room of the house with hundreds, if not thousands, of books and hung a sign demanding silence above them all so that she could read in peace. Openly bisexual, Millay had affairs with both men and women throughout her life. She and Eugen had what would be considered today an open marriage, which worked out surprisingly well for both of them. It's an unusual lifestyle that's not for everyone. She and Eugen both invited their lovers to stay at the farm with them throughout their lives, but they remained happily married throughout the 20s and 30s. Eugen managed their domestic life and also Millay's travels to good poetry readings. She was a little bit of a rock star before rock and roll existed. She sold out the Hollywood Bowl, which seats more than 17,000 people, on multiple occasions, including in the 30s, at the height of the Depression. Her popularity waned in the 1940s during the war, and gradually her output declined throughout that time. Eugen died in 1949 of lung cancer, and Millay was devastated. The local postmistress, a friend of the couple, helped Millay respond to letters of condolence, and then wrote her own to Millay, mourning the fact that Eugen never walked down the hill to fetch the mail anymore. Millay wrote back, "Yes, it must indeed seem impossible to you that he will not be coming down the hill to fetch the mail on this lovely autumn day. He never comes up the hill either anymore." So like I said, despite their somewhat unusual arrangement, they loved each other deeply. Millay followed Eugen shortly after 1950, dying of a heart attack, and her home, which her sister took care of for a while, eventually became a museum, which was open to visitors in 2010. Like I mentioned, I discovered her poetry in college by reading one poem in particular, which I'd now like to share with you. Euclid alone has looked on beauty bare. Let all who prate of beauty hold their peace, and lay them prone upon the earth, and cease to ponder on themselves, the while they stare at nothing, intricately drawn nowhere, in shapes of shifting lineage. Let geese gabble and hiss, but heroes seek release from dusty bondage into luminous air. O blinding hour, O holy, terrible day, when first the shaft into his vision shone, of light anatomized. Euclid alone has looked on beauty bare. Fortunate they who, though once only, and then but far away, have heard her massive sandal set on stone.